Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I'm your host Pete Bickford here at the ComicBase Livestream. Thanks for joining us. And I hit the start almost to the second, but did not quite get it. I'll dial in the macros a little bit more in the coming days. I'm sure we'll get one of these days. Anyway, I'll welcome our mod Greg to the show, and as well as everyone else. Today it's going to be a summer show. It's not going to be too serious, honestly, because I'm going to try to concentrate on just fun stuff for once. We have a lot of work ahead of us, but you know, I think it should be a lot of fun getting going. And I'm hoping that the mod isn't trying to flag me down here. I don't see anything in the chat, so I'm hoping everything's cool. Good. Okay. His hand signals on camera and off. It's always fun. Anyway, hey Oro, first of the show here, and yes, and you once again win the prize for naming the cover. Disney Summer Fun from August 1991. I can't believe you could nail these ones. I mean, even I couldn't have gotten that one without some kind of photo reference to help me out. But anyway, Andre, welcome everyone. Thomas B, Robbie, good to see you, as well as Ed, and yeah, so looks like things are starting to heat up around the country. Brian, welcome. I get used to saying hail. But so the topic of the show is, I don't have a lot of comic-based news to get through. Honestly, I want to talk about fun things I'm looking forward to for the summer cons, summer movies, summer reading, and a couple of thoughts on the disposability of things that are precious in life. So but that being said, we're also here to answer your questions. So if you have any questions about ComicBase or comics or life in general, please post them in the chat, and if you would put them to @ComicBaseTV. It helps me spot them in the stream of things that are going by as we get rolling. So let me see here. I meant, and unfortunately, this is like, I have a long-standing policy of, like, I don't drink before the show. I drink a lot after the show, but I was going to break it for once. I was going to make myself a glass of Destin ale, which I just picked up a keg of while I was down there last time, and because it was a perfect summer day for it. By the way, I hope you guys had a great Memorial Day. It's a weird one to say Happy Memorial Day on, because I mean, it's a very somber occasion. It's for the people who lost their lives in defense of the country. These are for the people who didn't make it back. Veterans Day is for the people who've served, and whether they made it back or not, ideally. But yeah, it's a weird one, because it is actually, because we're Americans, it's the start of summer. We're not pagans. We don't observe some kind of weird vernal calendar, to try to figure out when summer truly starts. We know it starts with a barbecue and it ends with a barbecue, and we know which barbecues those are. So we had a great one over here. My oldest daughter just graduated from high school, and so that's the last of the kids as far as their pre-collegiate education around here at the Bickford house. All very proud of her, and hope you guys also got together and got together with friends. It's been a bunch of years before we had anything resembling a normal time out there, so I'm hoping we're making up for lost time. Oh, and hey, Fabian, welcome from Belgium. All right, so let's see. I have a question here. Let's see if I can pin it down here. Some big ComicBase TV breaking his no drinking during the live stream thing. Honestly, I was pouring it, but honestly, I was so flustered getting the hyperdeck, which is what we're using for video playback, working with the appropriate video standards and everything else, that I ran the clock out so much that even though I poured the beer, I couldn't wait for the foam to settle before I had to run up and start the show. So anyway, it'll be waiting for me as soon as we're done here. All right, so Andre asks, how is it going for the 64-bit CB? I'm going to talk about that one next time. It's not bad news. I promised myself I was going to save this show to not talk about comic-based futures, because I think the next show is going to be all about comic-based futures, and we'll start off with that one as well. As you guys have, if you've been following the live streams along, you probably know that ComicBase 60, converting to 64-bit is probably the biggest technical hurdle we're facing on the new one, because we have to rewrite basically all the database subsystems so that they get rid of the old legacy code that we need to do to open up old ComicBase 2017 and earlier databases, go fully into the 32-bit world, once again take on our good friend Crystal Reports, switching over to now the 64-bit version of them, and solving a bunch of other things. But it's not going badly. I'll say that, and I'll give you much more detail. And who knows, there might even be a demo when we talk next time. But we'll take it from there. All right, let's see here. Is there any other questions I want to hit right off the bat? Greg says, yes, when I saw the week's graphic, I had to double check to make sure it wasn't Wally Wood's take on Disney. Yeah, it's as you guys, if you follow Disney at all, was it Carl Barks is often he's thought of as the good duck artist. There's a couple others that are very notable as well, but Wally Wood, also fantastic artist of the era, and it would be interesting to see his take on it. No, I think that one's from the 90s. I actually do not know the artist on that one. Maybe if Oro can fill us in, that'd be great. All right, so let's get to it. Yeah, let's get to the show notes here. So what this has been attempted, it was meant to be beforehand. What it really is Diet Orange Crush, which we make up by the 5-gallon pack, and we do in a kegerator. Which, by the way, if you guys ever do want to start, learning to do, become an alcoholic affordably, which I guess if you're going to be an alcoholic, I would suggest doing it affordably. But but one thing, when I moved from California to Tennessee, I realized that the alcohol taxes out here are stupid compared to where they were in California. California, I think, just wants you drunk. It helps to deal with many things around that state. But yeah, like a mediocre bottle of very low end wine would suddenly, it went from being like $2.50 in California, from this $2 chuck from Trader Joe's, suddenly it's like $4.50 chuck out here. But even then, it's impossible to buy. Like a 6-pack of beer starts at $10, whereas I'm used to that 6-pack of beer starting at $6 maybe. I used to brew my own beer. I don't do it as much out here because I lost my access to the brewing supply company I used to use to get all the hops and everything else. But that was always part of these summer, festivities, is brewing up different types of ESBs and ales and whatnot. But one thing that I did as part of home brewing is I laid in a kegerator. Kegerators are great, not just because it gives you an excuse to have beer around, but if you are home brewing, you guys will probably know that the worst thing about home brewing is that part where the guy hands you the bottle of beer, and you say, "Oh, it's my home brew," and you kind of go, "That sounds great." And you try very, very hard not to have that last sip of beer in the bottle, which will be nothing but dead yeast, which is. Some people think that's super tasty. I have never acquired a taste for it because I grew up drinking commercial beer and yuck. So anyway, what kegerators allow you to do is they allow you to skip what's called a secondary fermentation process, which is how if you're doing home brewing, typically what happens is you brew up the beer, and that's what forms most of the alcohol. But then you have to pour it into bottles, usually with a little touch of sugar in each one, which then mixes with the yeast and then gives you the carbonation inside the bottle, the sealed container of the bottle. This only struck me as a hell of a lot of work, kind of nasty because you always wind up with the dead leftover yeast at the end. And come on, this is the modern era. Who wants to do it this way? So what you do instead, if you have a kegerator, is you take your 5 gallons of beer after you're done brewing it, and you force carbonate it. So you basically have a container of CO2, and you throw that at it at about 30 psi for a couple of days, and boom, when you're all done, you have fully carbonated beer and you don't have dead yeast everywhere. That's how I use it. But the other thing it does is, because if you're going to have a kegerator at all, you probably can fit a couple, 3 5-gallon tanks inside it. It gives you an excuse to have just carbonated water on tap. Or in my case, mix up a bunch of, Orange Crush used to sell their stuff in powdered format for the diet stuff. And if you simply just mix 5 gallons of just pure tap water, let it carbonate up, and mix in several packets of the dry powder, swirl it around, let it carbonate for a couple of days, and you wind up with 5 gallons of Orange Crush, which you can tap anytime you want for a couple cents a glass. So anyway, brewing tips for those people in the home who don't want to get the kids drunk. So anyway, let's do that. All right, let's see here. Oh, and Oral says it is 1991. It's from wow. Who's the? I'm trying to. pin in on the artist here. Come on, don't. Okay, so yes, Juka. Wow, I don't know how to say that name, but very cool. Disney has really has been very good over their comics history in tapping foreign artists who just had a real eye and a real flair. And I'm guessing that's who Juka is. And also says wrap on cover. So sweet. All right, let's see here. Oh, and Lana says, just downloading the ComicBase took almost 2 hours while the submissions. Yeah. By the way, there's going to be some news on that front as well. There's a lot of big stuff happening, but again, it's like I think next week is going to be really a better time to talk about some of this because some of it will be more definite. But there's some really good technical things happening behind the scenes around here, and we'll try to get again. I think next week's show is going to be pretty much all comic-based futures. So definitely, we'll want to come back in there. All right, so let's get back to it. So yeah, like I said, what this was meant to be. The third keg in the kegerator is a keg of Destiny Ale, which it turns out the place I bought down in Florida a while back. We were walking around the neighborhood a few weeks back, and it turns out it's 2 blocks away from Destin Brewery. We just stumbled upon it. Literally, we're just walking around the neighborhood, just kind of checking the place out. Ran into the Kelly, the brewmaster, there as he was on his production day, and so we were chatting around. And he said, "Yeah, come back tomorrow. The beer garden will be open." It's like right on. So want to patronize the local guy there. So yeah, he puts together a pretty darn nice summer blonde. Well worth checking out if you're ever in the Destin area. I don't know how big his distribution is, but it's worth doing. Another one I want to give a shout out to in terms of just drinks, because I figure we'll start off with summer drinks for the whole thing. New Heights Brewing, that's my local out here by Nashville. They have a summer blonde called Nothing Fancy. It's nice light summer beer. When you get into the fall seasons, things like that, at that point I think the bitters and the stouts and the IPAs really taste a little better. But on these hot summer days, it's nothing like a nice cool refreshing light lager, amber lager. So that's what I would go with. Now, if you are of the type of person who would also likes more classical cocktails, hard to beat a gin and tonic for days like this. But if you want to try something extra, I want to throw some recipes at y'all. Let's try this one over here. And here's a little guy called the Tipsy Mermaid. It's basically carbonated. Well, it's not carbonated, but it's basically alcoholic adult lemonade, curacao, a little rum. Here's the recipe for it if you guys want to have a look. Just couldn't be easier to make. Make it by the pitcher. It looks terrific. It's terrific for serving at cookouts and so forth. But yeah, just it's a wonderful summer drink, and it's nice to mix it up once in a while. I'm not a big guy for tequilas or rum. Too many calories in the latter and too many hangovers in the former for me. But again, I like personally to keep it kind of citrusy and light. This is not a bad one if you guys want to give it a go. Don't go too nuts on the curacao. A little goes a long way in terms of the coloring, but that would be my advice on that one. All right, getting back to business here. All right, so let's talk about summer movies. Let's see here. Yes, most people stumble out of the brew pub, not into it. Yeah, exactly. All right, so let me get out of here. And all right, yeah, let's talk a little bit about movies that are worth looking forward to this summer. And I think I actually am going to try queuing up some vid on this. So let's see if we can make this happen. Give me just a second. We're playing with a new toy here, and let's see how this goes. And of course, the bane of my existence on all this stuff is just window management. No matter how many you've got, you always wish you had more. All right, so let's take the obvious one right now, and that is. Oh, actually, I'm sorry, I forgot. I need to switch this to SuperSource, because if I don't, it's probably going to copyright strike me right and left with everything I do. So give me just a second to make that happen. That's not what. Nope, that's the one. That'll work. It's. I probably want to move the SuperSource off the other side, but we'll see what we can make happen here. So I think the whole trick on playing some of these videos is I want to keep the sound down, and I want to, or at least sound very, very low, and I want to try to obscure at least part of the video. So let's see how that works. So let me queue up. All right, there we go. All right, so this, of course, is our good friend, Mr. Tom Cruise. here I am going to dip the sound on this one for just a second.
Your instructor is one of the finest pilots this program has ever produced.
All right, because the second we come in there and we start playing any kind of recognizable video, we are absolutely getting copyright strike. So the deal on this one, Maverick, I gotta say, I was dreading this one ever since I heard it was in production. I thought, who needs to go back to Top Gun? It was a fun 80s movie. It was, why mess with perfection? But then later on, of course, you always fear that they're going to take something you really loved from way back when and woke it up. And that's messed up. I mean, who wants that? So here, I'm going to trim if I can figure out how to get back to the sources on this one. Actually, I know how I had this set up. I was going to come in there with key 2 and then turn off the super source. All right, let's go back to here. No, I want to go to there. There we go. That's how I wanted to do this. Okay. So, yes, guys, believe it or not, there was actually some preparation for this one. All right, so yeah, this thing was basically being filmed. It was due to get released right about when COVID was hitting. And one of the things that was really bad is, of course, China's become hugely important to modern movie distribution, and they'd done stupid, sell out, kiss up to China things with this one. Like, they took the Taiwan flag off of his jacket, and was, I guess it was meant to be his dad's jacket from back his dad's old tours, and they'd replaced that one, photos, either gotten rid of. Physically the Taiwan jacket patch to appease the Chinese market. A couple years later, when this thing's finally coming out, China decides, with Tencent, I guess, was the distributor over in China, somehow decided that we can't make this happen because it seems way too pro-American, way too pro-military, and so they couldn't get a Chinese distribution after all. So Tencent pulled out. Tencent is the guys behind TikTok. Anyway, so then at great expense, apparently, they went and photoshopped this Taiwan logo right back onto his jacket, which is kind of freaking terrific, if you ask me. Everyone who has seen this movie has not had a darn bad thing to say about it. It sounds like just a absolutely righteously good time. I am looking forward to seeing this one. Probably try to catch it this weekend if I possibly can. It's got something like a 97%, box office score on Rotten Tomatoes. It's rated even better than the first one. So anyway, I'm really looking forward to this one. And like I say, if you've seen it, let me know what you thought in the chat. But like I said, I've yet to find someone who thought this wasn't a great time. All right, so let's go on to the next one here. If I can get my queuing back, and again, I'm going to keep the audio awfully low on these. Now, okay, let's talk about one I'm not that excited about. This one's hitting in July. This is, of course, Thor, Love and Thunder. This, it's funny because you would normally think that for a comic book guy like myself, I'd be doing nothing but recommending comic book movies to you, all summer long if we possibly could. Realistically, though, I don't know. First of all, I'm not a Thor guy. If you're a Thor guy, maybe this one feels better to you. This one, I don't know, to me feels like a bit more of a retread, and then you have the I don't know. It's to me a little bit off-putting, the idea that you're going to take Natalie Portman, who looks like she's an anorexic person from could barely lift her own boots up. It seems like they've more or less photoshopped larger triceps onto her to make it look like that she'd ever be able to even lift that hammer off the ground. But because when you actually see the shots of her contemporaneous with the filming, and then you see what you're seeing in the actual movie, it's like, yeah, she's got about 20 more pounds of muscle on her than appears to actually have been the case. So I don't know if that was CGI or if it's just just the power of feminine good looks, but it just seems weird and implausible, and yeah, I don't know. It's just I feel like the whole Shiro's journey is it's a little played out for me. So and I'm not loving that Thor's a second run in his own movie, but again, it seems like they've definitely gone with a more humorous take on the whole thing. Maybe this will appeal for you. It's not top of my hit parade, so I'm just be honest on that one. So let's move on to something that I am a little bit more enthusiastic about, because there are definitely ones here. This one, I don't know if you've heard about or not, but this is called Everything. Was it Everything Everywhere and All at Once? It's a multiverse movie. So if you think Doctor Strange: The Multiverse of Madness, but it seems just absolutely fun and bonkers. Basically, this lady, Michelle Yeoh, who we know from everything from Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon to what was the Bond movie she was in back in '99 with Pierce Brosnan? Um, Blanking on that one. Sorry about that, guys. But anyway, she's been a load of things. She's got real star power. She's a real, she's one of these actresses. I think that becomes actually more interesting as she gets older. But she's in this absolutely bonkers thing where at one point she's running a family dry cleaner, getting audited by the IRS, suddenly gets thrown into a multiverse where she's living out all these possible versions of herself, her life, and everything else. And it's absolutely nuts. And some of them, she's a crazed ninja assassin. Other ones, she's just elegant person. Other things, I think I saw a reality where she was either a cartoon or a pet rock. It was bizarre and absolutely bonkers. It looks like just enormous amounts of fun, and I hear it's got a lot of heart. I unfortunately I've been a little head to the grindstone on this one, so I've not had a chance to look at it very much myself. But that again is top on my hit parade as far as things to see, and I'm not even going to dare the music on this one, so I'm going to dip that one all the way down. All right, so let's see here. Scott asked, wasn't she in Star Trek Discovery? Yeah, I believe she was in one of the Star Treks on that one. I forget what part she played in that one. But yeah, she's one of these actresses. She pops up in a lot of weird places. But this is like her starring role of the whole thing. And it just, like I say, it just looks bizarre, and it looks like just a hell of a lot of fun. So check that out. Let's see here. Let me see. Oh, we got some comments on here. Let's see. Okay. Comments on beer here. Greg says, saw Top Gun Maverick this past weekend. Tell me that they didn't make it look like Canada was the bad guy enriching uranium. Yeah, I hear that the bad guy in what's his name? In Top Gun Maverick is definitely not Russia. Apparently they just call it the enemy. They don't name what country it is, but yeah, it's kind of they're playing some fun games with that one. All right, let's see here. And Ed says, yeah, I love Michelle and everything she does. So okay, let's see what else got on here. Oh yeah, so one more, and hey, just blame this one on me. Just I'm a dad. What are you gonna do? But let's see if I can find it. Here we go. I am gonna say, call this one corny, but ever since I saw a pre-release when I was consulting at TiVo at one point, and we had a pre-release of this movie that was going to be called, featuring these crazy minion people. And so I saw this 3 months before it actually hit the theaters, and ever since then, I've always been a sucker for them. It's good, fun family stuff, absolutely wacky. It's everything I want in kind of a kid-friendly movie, and it's also one of those ones. It's almost like with Disney. It's like you almost want to find some kids to take with you to the movie just so you can enjoy it and not just look like you're just an adult guy having way too much fun laughing at childish jokes. But yeah, no, I think pretty much all the Despicable Me ones. I did not love the I think Despicable Me 3. I didn't. That was a little bit of a low point for me. But the Minions movies, the other ones, I just think these are just a hell of a lot of fun. And so anyway, this is Despicable Me and the Rise of Gru, I think they call it Minions and the Rise of Gru, because I think they've also realized that the Minions kind of steal the show whenever they're on screen. But this is basically the origin story of how Gru, the big bad guy, got to meet the Minions and so forth. And he's basically trying out for a super villain gang and learning to cope with his evil powers. So looks like a ton of fun. I can't wait. That one's apparently hitting in July. All right, so let's see here. I'm going to stop the movie playback because I hope you guys catch the live stream, because this sucker's getting getting struck. All right, let's turn off key number 2, and there we go. All right, that's a little bit more normal. All right, so other things that are happening in life. So I've been asked a lot about the convention season. What conventions are we doing? I did not go to MegaCon in Orlando. I don't know. I'm half and half as to whether that was a mistake or not, but I do want to at least check out some of the shows this next time coming up. I believe is it Dragon Con? Is that in the fall? I'm not entirely certain about that. I'm trying to learn the regional conventions, because I come from California so long that I have all the ones that are plausible from the Bay Area memorized, but I don't know all that many about the ones that are in the East and Southeast. If there are any really good shows on the East Coast that I haven't mentioned till now, please, if especially if it's a regional show that is just especially great, drop me a line. I'd love to know more about things as we're starting to wake up from this induced coma of the last 2 years. That said, the word's going out. Are we going to Comic-Con this year? I hate to say it, the answer at this point is I don't know. Just the way that the work schedule is working out for me right now is I know most of the staff is buried up to their eyeballs. And for me, as much as I want to, I think it might be a question of, do we ship on time or do I go and have fun? So I think the next couple weeks will tell the story on that one. But I gotta say, at the moment, if you hold my feet to the fire right now, I said I'd probably have to sit this one out. But I'm hoping that I get, every once in a while when you're programming, you have the days when you're just a genius. I could use a couple of those days. And if I do, then suddenly maybe my schedule loosens up and I can make it happen. But as far as cons go, that's about it for me on the summer. But like I say, if anyone knows other ones that are happening more towards the fall that seem worth checking out, whether it's Chicago or anywhere else, let me know. Let me know what your faves are, and I'm looking for some excuses to travel and see more of my peeps. So that's about where that's at. All right, so. Lastly, I want to get to summer reading, and if this is a quick show, because that just means that my beer will still be cold when I get to it. But by the way, if you do, Aura says Dragon Con will be, where are we at here? Thursday, September 1st, ends on Monday, September 5th. So that's a good cap to this summer. Yeah, has anyone been to Dragon Con? Is it decent? Let me know. Because I think of it more as a gaming show, but I mean, what's the comic and comic creator aspect of that one? Is it still strong for that? Because I gotta admit, I mean, I love gaming, but I'm mostly about the comics and meeting creators and meeting folks I know in the industry. So let me know what you folks think of that one. All right, so yeah, last I want to talk about just summer reading. What are some fun things that I've been reading and I'm looking forward to reading? And I'm going to take my headphones off because I think everything's working right. So I'm just going to trust this to work, because otherwise I'm going to swivel my head around and I will otherwise be doing physical comedy, which I don't really want to. So, all right, as you guys know, I've been a big fan of the omnibus thing. So here's Savage Sword of Conan omnibus, a couple volumes of that one. These are terrific. Oh, they also weigh a freaking ton. But if you guys ever read the old Conan the Barbarian comics, this was like Savage Sword Conan was the Marvel black and white magazine that was a little bit more faithful to the original Robert E. Howard adaptations, a bit more adult in the way just dealt with everything. But there were some ones that I'm incredibly fond of. Where it's what introduced me to really reading Robert E. Howard in the original, which by the way he also has been collected into a number of different trade paperbacks and some other things that are cheap to get. But the artwork on these is just, I mean, they had some just amazing artists on this run. Ernie Chan, John Buscema, Val, Mike. That one's let's see. Michael Fleischer was writer on a lot of them, but I'm trying to remember Val Maverick. Absolutely terrific stuff. It was like one of the things that really taught me to be a little more sophisticated as a comic reader about enjoying just the pure art of comics, not just the comic booky experience with the color and everything else. It really makes you focus on just the line, the pencils. The writing on some of them was absolutely fantastic. There are a couple Duff stories in there. I mean, let's be honest. But the ones especially that were more directly adapted from the Robert E. Howard books were just absolutely terrific. Well worth checking out. The problem, of course, is like most things that we all loved as kids, is if we go and we try to buy the originals, they're going to, first of all, they're hard to find. But then if you do find them, they're going to set you back anywhere from $10 to $50, per issue to try to pick them up. I want to say the first issue of Savage Sword Conan goes for several $100 at this point. The only good news, if that helps, is that it actually wasn't the best of the issues of the run. The best of the issues in the run, so far as I could tell, were the ones that are collected in these omnibuses right now, and the omnibuses are just a steal because you get, I want to say, like 20 magazines worth of stuff in a single volume, and the volumes you can get for like anywhere between 60 and 90 bucks on eBay or Amazon. So yeah, if you do have things you loved from the 80s, 70s, and so forth, have a look and see whether they've collected them in an omnibus format, because that is just a terrific way to read some of this stuff again. Which again, why beat up your old copies if you still got them? Every time you leaf through them, there's always a chance you'll damage them, and you also get the advantage of just beautiful production value. You get to see these things the way they should have been printed, on better paper, on and everything else. And it's nice to, on some of these ones that were more I'm going to say more episodic, but that told more of an overall story, where it's nice to read a whole bunch of issues at once, and so you can see how the plot lines worked out and see the different writer arcs as they went. It does get exhausting if you try to read all of them at once. Imagine trying to read 10 years worth of Savage Sword in a single sitting. Don't do that, because you'll just wear yourself out. But yeah, no, I'm a big fan of the omnibuses. One thing I will also say, and this one is just my baby, Uncanny X-Men. I got volume 1 kicked around here someplace. This is volume 2. This is the Chris Claremont, John Byrne run of Uncanny X-Men. For my money, the best superhero comics that have ever been made. Everyone has their own favorites, of course. A lot of people are George Perez fans, where else? But for me, the X-Men of the early 80s were just that was as good as it got. Big fan. Also, you can get the Captain America, Jack Kirby run. Those are easily found as well. But yeah, so do check out the omnibuses if that is your sort of thing. And then I think I probably just moved right before the show, which would be exactly like me. Give me just a sec. All right, we're going to check in one more place, and then we give up. No. Found it. Of course, I brought it over to my scanner because I was going to scan it. So this is, so the problem, of course, with things like omnibuses or original things like that is you can't take them to the beach. So it's really, really nice in the summer to read things that are disposable and wonderful, that are still just really fun. So your things like this, your cheap mass market paperback, or cheap trade paperback. There's a lot to be said. Summer reading is light. It delivers fun basically from the first page. It isn't going to wrap your brain too hard, and it's going to entertain you all the way. And also, it's not meant to be eternal. It's not going to be something that, like, oh man, I can't, I can never find that story again. How will I ever read that? I think the epitome of this is when you talk about mass market trade paperbacks. This is that Mickey Spillane one I was talking about here. Vengeance is mine. I used to have a Punisher action figure that said that. Cool thing, by the way, is somebody had taken a bunch of the voice chips that were used for that particular model of Punisher and somehow transplanted them into a certain number of Barbies. So there was, at the time, I want to say the early 90s, there was a non-zero chance that if you picked up a Barbie and you pressed whatever thing it was that made it talk, there was a minor scandal about one that said, math is hard. But yes, there were a couple of them that actually said, vengeance is mine. Anyway, but getting back into the real story of this one. So this is Mickey Spillane. And if you can see, this is what I was whining about last time, how really, really small the type is. But 142 pages, you get, this is an absolute hard-boiled, film noir movie right in there. And they sold for $0.25. I mean, that is just fantastic. And before I get into it, Baltimore Convention is always good. Let's see here. A lot of dealers and artists, not all like San Diego. Nice. All right, let's see here. Yes, and Greg says, "Welcome to the ComicBase Livestream, starring Pete's Empty Chair." Yeah, it's called Dead Air. I realize that, but we every once in a while you want to try something new. Anyway, so but the thing I want to say is, and this is probably like my thought for the day. let me see here. Before I get into that, Ed says, got several omnibus spy coming soon for summer reading, like Luke Cage, Moon Knight, and The Death and the Return of Superman. Oh, right on. Yeah, no, this is a great time to read that stuff. And honestly, right now is when they're cheap. If you wait too long to grab these ones, like the Tomb of Dracula ones, I waited too long on, and so if I want to grab them now, I either have to settle for really, really crummy paperback, bindings of these really thick books, which is not a recipe for happiness, because as soon as you do this with them, half the pages want to fall out. I mean, they destroy in a visible way. The production values just aren't there, and they cost about half as much as the omnibus would have cost. But if you get a chance to grab omnibuses of something that you really like, do it. Some of them times, every once in a while they come back in print, but not all that often. And you don't want to be in a position where you're trying to track down like the first 30 issues of Tomb of Dracula and finding out the only place you can buy is $400 on eBay. At that point, just hell, I may as well just get the original copies. But anyway, but yeah, so the thing I want to say though is, I figure everyone here that that we're if we are we're middle-aged or at least adults, and we've been collecting comic books all our life. We were always the kids who fell in love with whatever the thing was, that issue of X-Men, that Robert Heinlein novel, the cheap detective novel, whatever the thing was. That's the thing that was magic to us. But we were probably the kids who held on to it a little bit better than most people, who maybe, as soon as we discovered like plastic bags, every one of our comics went in them. We tried before there were plastic bags, we tried very, very hard to put our comics in between a couple of textbooks or something so they didn't get squished on the bike ride home. And of course, until there were things like bags and boards and all the modern apparatus of comic collecting, it was a hopeless thing, which is why most of the comics from, anything prior to 1982 or so is usually, near mint is not the most common way to find those things. That said, I do think there's a time in life where we ought to remember what that moment was when we first actually fell in love with those things from our childhood that made them special in the first place. And even though in our head, everything's always near mint in our head because it was new when we saw it, you want to kind of recreate that one. But there's a lot to be said for it not making it too precious in your own mind. Let me show you an example of something. Let me go to this guy right here. So this was my lunchbox. I mean, it's not really my lunchbox. It's somebody selling a thing that was exactly like my lunchbox on eBay. But this was the one when the kids were young in my family, and we all marched off from to first grade. Kindergarten, of course, you came home for lunch, but first grade is when you're going to have to carry your lunch with you all day long, and you need to actually make it through the day. And so this be the sort of thing you got. You had the thermos with it, which was always useless. It whatever, you could pour cold milk in the morning, and by the time you opened it up at lunchtime, it was always medium, not particularly cold. And after a while, the whole thing kind of smelled like bologna sandwiches. This was the other side of that one right there. Anyway, it's funny because in 1973 or so, I was so proud of this one. This was, Jerry Anderson UFO, series. I was a big fan of the whole thing. I don't know. I watched it later as an adult, and it was kind of like, wow, I've never actually seen the whole series before. It was kind of neat to see that, but it wasn't something that you don't really see it the same way you did when you were a kid. It doesn't really have quite that same level of wonder attached to it. And for that matter, it's like, when I was, going to first grade for the first time, I knew I had the coolest lunchbox in school. I mean, other people had, Snoopy or Scooby-Doo, or I'm not sure. I think Dukes of Hazzard was a couple years away. It might have been something like Happy Days, something like that would have been coming along around then, or something really dumb like, Mama and the Family or something. But, I had the cool lunchbox. And of course, what happens being kids is that after a couple, 3 years of banging your lunchbox on every fence post and everything else that comes after a while, at some point the little plastic latch gives way, the thermos, you lose the cup for it, whatever the thing is, something gets broken in the dishwasher, and again, you never quite get that old stale bologna sandwich smell out of the whole thing, and eventually the whole thing gets chucked in the garbage. Then fast forward like 20 years, and you see that someone has your lunchbox, on eBay, and suddenly you want to pay a couple $100 to get that same lunchbox again in the near mint condition it was in your mind. One of the first things I ever saw on eBay when I heard there was this thing called eBay is like, wait, people are selling old lunchboxes? What's that about? And I actually, of course, found my old lunchbox, and someone had a gem mint copy of it, or I don't know what they call it at the time, but it was nicer than my copy ever was. I guess the one that my parents would have spent maybe $2-3 for back in the '70s, they had it for $235, and I'm still a little bit kicking myself I didn't grab it. But here's the weird part about all this stuff is, you know, I like comic books in a way because they were really, I mean, they're a populist medium. They're something that you're meant to be able to buy for not too much money. The kid's meant to be able to buy, with the money he has on hand, and fall in love with the characters and read them up, and yeah, for people who collected things like baseball cards, things like that. Yeah, you are supposed to stick them in your back pocket as you proudly head over to your friend's place and whip them out, and and the ones you don't like that much you stick in your in the spokes of your bike to make the cool clicky noise and so forth. But even the ones you love and you try so hard to take care of, after a while, just because they've been loved on so much, you realize that as an adult they're all kind of beat up. And that's not so bad, because I mean, there really was that flash of wonder that we got, as a kid, which we got pretty cheaply, that as an adult we're just always trying to get back. I mean, that's half of why all of us spend stupid amounts of money at auction to get, the bestest known copy of whatever comic that we really loved when we were kids. But we also have to know that, the reason it was cool was because as a kid we could get that thing pretty cheaply. And all the best things in life, I mean, they say the best things in life are for free. I think that's probably true, but I think the most, nostalgic things in life are also the things that are also disposable. I mean, if it's something that we knew, I mean, let's think about the things that were in your life that your parents gave you. Like, say, this is your grandpa's watch. Take really good care of it because it's so precious and so valuable, and whatever the story is on the whole thing. I can almost guarantee that's not your favorite artifact. It's just because, I mean, you never got a chance to bond with it on that kind of intimate level, just carrying it around, showing off, doing stuff like that. You might have kept it really safe in a special box or special drawer, put on a display case, and you might have admired it. There might have been a lot of really cool things about it that you look for as qualities in later things in your life, but it's never that thing that really sparks that instant wonder. In a way that, the first time, I saw UFO, or a UFO lunchbox was, or the same time, I bought my 35-cent copy of, X-Men. And so, yeah, or, my favoriteest books that I've got in my entire collection are not the nicest books in my collection. I mean, I have beautiful art books in my collection, things that I can, as an adult, just admire the quality of all day long. No, the most precious books in my collection are a couple of mass market, used trade paperbacks, probably been sold through 5 other people before the time I got to them, which I, managed to get a couple of them, Martian Chronicles and Something Wicked This Way Comes. Those are the ones I took in to have Ray Bradbury sign when I was, when I was able to finally meet him, because those were the ones that got dragged up on scouting camping trips. They were the ones that got lent out to friends, because you could talk about how cool this story was and so forth. So yeah, they saw a lot of wear. And so yeah, it's weird, like I say, talking amongst ourselves here, that we were always the guys who were going to be the first ones to take something kind of common, like a mass market 25-cent trade paperback, and say, hey, this is something worth preserving. Look at that art. That art's actually really cool. I wonder who the artist is. We would actually try to find a way to not wad this thing up. But that being said, it's like, the bonding that happens with it happens when things are kind of impermanent. So what I suggest is this. Obviously take care of your stuff, look to the future. We know better than most people that the things that are throwaways today are something that we very well likely become very nostalgic to us now. So, we were the guys who, when we were done playing with our toys, sometimes we'd put up in the attic, put them in a box, and come back to them later, 20 years later, and be glad that we'd done that. That being said, play with your toys. I mean, have the things out there with you, especially on these beach days, the days when you are going to go down by the water, the day when there is a decent chance it's going to get sand in it everywhere, when the sun's going to bleach out the cover, when you're going to have to bend a page over to remember where you were. Have some things in your life like that you can just enjoy and pass on, whether they get discarded, whether they get given to the next kid, whatever else. Yeah, I mean, there ought to be like the disposable sorts of easy fun in your life, especially in summers like this. And I guess one thing I'd say is, along with all your gem mint copies of your high value comics and the ones you keep in Mylar and the ones you keep get CGC and things like that, have a certain other stash of your comic books that they aren't the ones you just despise. Nobody likes those. How the ones that you kind of like, but it's just a crummy copy. It's one of the things I buy a lot at comic shows is I'll go through comic books from the 70s and 80s, and I'll buy a bunch of VG and G copies of just titles I liked: Unknown Soldier, Captain America, Daredevil. They're not worth anything much. I mean, the grade really keeps them from becoming very worthwhile, unless they all die. But they're nice ones to both casually revisit on your own, put your feet up on, and just really kind of be back in that moment of wonder, like when you first read these things as a kid, and also pass on to your own kids. It's not so bad an idea to just have like your own little reading library or lending library of comics that, yeah, you think they're cool. They're not junk, but it's okay if they get busted up. It's okay if someone doesn't, hold the pages back and, folds them over too hard. I mean, they've already been passed around a lot. And yeah, so, I mean, am I advocating that we, extinguish all, the life of old dead comic books? No, but I mean, there's some that are already pretty well on their way there. In which case I'd say, you know what? Take them out of the bag, pass them around, and hand them out to some people who might get turned on to something like that. And also, just take them to the beach. Enjoy, that would be my thoughts on that. Anyway, that's about all I've got to say on that. Guys, thanks for joining us on this one. Next time is going to be a bit more serious, and we'll talk a lot more about future direction comics. As promised, I am heading down to the bar, and I'm going to grab that beer and probably have one or two after it. Thanks for joining us, and I'll catch you guys next time. Take care.